So now before I hand over to Sal, I wanted to do a little bit of an introduction. So Sal is a member of the club. He's a qualified contemporary psychotherapist and yoga teacher. He offers movement, mood, and mindset training, which combines psychology, yoga, and breathing practices to help, business owners, entrepreneurs, individuals to really help them make fundamental shifts in their mindset as well as emotional resilience. Now, we're really excited for Sal to be hosting this session for us at the club, having had a conversation with him about some of the barriers that get in front of any business owner, but also good business owners, which is themselves. And I particularly like the title of the session around, going from self-conscious to conscious self. And I hope that's intrigued you enough to understand what is there that I can be doing to kind of shift how actually my mindset is and how I can stop getting in my own way. I'll leave it there and let Sal introduce himself and the session. So enjoy, and over to you, Sal.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Some faces I know. Nice to see that if you already know me. If you don't, my name is Sal, and I just saw the chat. Woo, we got a tall order today. I saw Ego is the Enemy book, Chris. Yep, love that. Reading that currently. I'm seeing some breathing techniques and some getting over things about what people think. You've come to the right place. Hopefully, we can distill in this short piece of time some massive insights. So I invite you to hold what's going on for you, like the biggest thing that be most useful, and let that be sort of sitting in your mind. So when you go through some of the things I'm going to share, some of the exercises, that you can really dial that in. So questions, if your questions pop up, put them in the chat as we go through. We've got 3 kind of small mini pieces. We'll kind of perhaps stop at piece 2, piece 3, and have a little check-in, and there's a big Q&A session afterwards. So as we go through, note down stuff. I'll be doing a screen share, a little like Sarah was doing. So I invite you to keep mute on and keep an open mind. Let's see where we get to. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here, which is this one. And you probably already know, excuse me 1 second. You probably already know that to do the best view, you might want the side-by-side speaker view. So you can change that as you need. All right, so those of you who don't know me, I've already had an intro, so I'm going to move straight on. You know what I do. So this is about shifting. I, hands up, have been generally a quite self-conscious person over the years, so I really know firsthand what this is like. I've done a lot of work around mindset, a lot of work around yoga and body to move into a more conscious state. It's a flowing process. It's all work in progress. So I feel it. I get it. Okay, so what we're going to cover. Mindset, first thing, how to adopt a mindset where we really see opportunity to see rather than fear. And I'll explain a little bit around some neuroscience, brain science, how this works. I'm trying to keep it simple, but it's useful to know how the mechanisms of us work so we can use it. We're going to touch some breath work and the reason why breath work and how the nervous system is all interrelated to this, the theme of what we're covering today. Perspective. So how we see the world. It is part mindset, it's part body, and it's part worldview. So that's the final piece. I've got a really nice process for you at the end to play with to do that. And finally, a Q&A session. So do write down questions if we're going through. I am really open to anything as we go through. Okay, before we do anything in the art of yoga, I'm going to invite you to become present. So if you're holding something, please place it down for a moment. Feel lift in your spine. Open across your shoulders. Bring attention to breathing. Simply breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in awareness. Breathe out whatever you've been doing. Perhaps breathe in a sense of clarity and open-mindedness. And breathe out anything you don't need so we can be clear-minded and ready to go. A little description of how I work. So introduction's already been done. I've been doing this a long time and I see for human behavior and performance, it's a really powerful thing to mix mindset with mood and movement. So mindset's thinking, all the mental stuff, all the thought stuff, all the beliefs. With mood, our emotions, we are emotionally driven creatures, and how we regulate our moods, what emotions we have are very important. But also with the body, so movement. When I say movement, voice is movement. physical movement, breathing is movement. So it's an interweave of how we work. Now, there are three core drives, and what triggers a self-conscious person is sometimes some of these drives get triggered. The first drive of a human system is the drive for safety and survival. So that is a core need, and we have that. If something triggers that, it's like an alarm system will go off, we'll go into a threat response. And I'll expand on this shortly. We also have a deep need to connect. And of course, with the pandemic, we've seen this issue come up a lot around, isolation, being disconnected from others. And it is a real issue. Now, self-conscious people as well, or having a self-conscious state, it can be tricky to connect because of that very heightened state. So again, we're going to touch on that. And thirdly, the mind, it likes to know. And we all know this because when we don't know something, we feel all out of sorts, maybe a little bit anxious. We don't know what someone thinks of us. We don't want to think about our business. We want to know. It's another need. So we're going to talk a little bit around how to meet these core needs. Okay, mindset. What is it? So I describe mindset as the architecture of our thinking. So it's all the beliefs, it's all the experiences, the biases, the hopes, the dreams, the fears, all that stuff, all the mental stuff. We are reference here, but the mind is wider than the brain. That's what we understand. But really, mindset is changeable. So sometimes we're in quite a positive mindset, sometimes a growth mindset, sometimes a fear mindset. So it changes, and it's important to know that it changes, because if you're stuck, you can move out. So here's some of the stuff that happens from brain science. We often largely are in this state, what I call prediction state. Anyone who has anxiety, this is what's happening. So the brain is designed for safety and survival before anything. It's not designed for happiness, it's designed for survival. So our wonderful old lizard brain, which is deep in the brainstem, and the limbic system, which is above it, is hardwired to look out for threats. Today's world, it could be a threat of what someone thinks about our work, what they think about our hairstyle, what they think about our choices. So the threats are sometimes psychological, or mostly psychological. If our mind's in a prediction state, we are going to be looking for threats. If we're looking for threats, it filters how we see, feel, and experience things. Now, this is the predominant state, and I wanted to make the point. So a lot of the time, we are naturally geared this way. It's a human thing. It's not right, wrong, it just is. So what we want to do is to know what's happening, to be able to see it, and then be able to move it. The more, let's say, elevated state of the human mind, which is the prefrontal cortex in the front, is to do with creativity. So the creative state looks at problems and challenges, looks at difficult people and conversations, and says, okay, what can I do here? What possibilities are there? Can I bring new things together? Can I solve the problem? Can I figure out how to deal with a business that's not working in the pandemic and create something new? We want to know that this state is highly available. It's a very human state, but it takes a bit more work. So Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winning psychologist, did a lot of work around fast and slow thinking. And this kind of is from the camp of that. So we want to know that if a default's more anxiety based, we're in prediction state. So how do we get into a more of a creative mind state, which we will touch on now. So to shift, everything that we come through, it just comes through our mind, it comes through our body, and it creates, whether we feel under threat, and I prefer the term safe enough, because absolute safety is perhaps unobtainable. It suggests the need for control, and the need for control is a very human thing. And if anyone's been through a pandemic recently, we know we're not in control. Basically, we are in control of a small degree of things, but we can influence a lot. So this state of being safe enough is really a kind of a reconciliation in one's mind and self about, I can handle challenges I've overcome before. So it starts becoming more of a self-created state, not an absolute need for everything to be perfect and go your way. When we shift that, and suddenly we start to move from the prediction state and fear state into a creative state, a potential state. The quality of our thinking absolutely determines our outlook. So you probably remember a time when you've been really negative about something, like, oh, this is rubbish, or they don't like me. And the world guarantees that that's how it happens. And then sometimes you might have changed your mind. Maybe you've had some new information, thought, man, this is not true. And then you realize that you just created that all in your head. So the quality of thinking is really important. And perhaps another level, which is somewhat even more important, is our emotional state. So as I was explaining, we are hardwired for survival. Our emotions, the limbic part of our brain, will happen quicker, faster, and more unconscious than the more recent human brain, the prefrontal cortex. So body, neuroception, we're coming to that, and how we breathe directly affects this. So we're starting to build a picture, I trust. Being self-conscious. If you are fairly self-conscious, it's generally an internal view. You might check this and think, is that right? Please challenge me if it's different for you when we come to the Q&A. But if it's mainly internal, we're worried about what people think of us. How do I look? How do we look? What do people think about my work? So on and so forth. So it becomes like this sort of internal, highly internal focus and very singular. We're not seeing the big picture. So that's a classic pattern of self-conscious state. Another one is looking for negative consequences, whether it's conscious or not. We'll be worried about them. What if they don't like me? Maybe they won't take on my work, so on and so forth. You probably got an example popping up in your mind about this. So these are kind of key attributes. A big one, the thinking mind and its filters. Well, try these ones. Worrying what people think about me. Well, I've done that one. Am I being judged? Yeah, come up with that question in my mind a lot when I've been with people. Do they like me? Now, when I say that, I don't know about you, but I feel quite childish. But in a way, being liked is a core need. We touched on at the beginning. The need to connect is a deep need of human connection. We are social animals. So being isolated, being out of the group is a serious deal. So when we talk about being liked, we're actually talking about a fundamental need being met, or if we're in fear of it. And of course, the classic, do they think I'm do they think I'm an idiot? Do they think I'm no good? Do they think I'm rubbish at what I'm doing? All these questions, they're really tough if we're in a self-conscious state. So I'm going to take a little challenge for you now. You can play along or you can avoid, you choose. So here are some questions which you can look to start shifting the mindset. Think about self-conscious kind of example. Let something come up that's not too tricky. And then ask yourself, which part of me is showing up? And then perhaps ask yourself, what aren't I seeing here? And then maybe if you think about the self-conscious state, what could go well? Such a shift, such a mindset shift question, this one, because a lot of time what could go wrong is literally front and center. But you can choose what you're going to ask yourself. What could go well? And that starts to reframe from the prediction to the creative mindset. What could I learn if it doesn't work out? Carol Dweck's work and growth mindset, something I teach in quite deep things, but we'll touch on it here. You can learn from any mistake if you can make meaning out of it and if you can take a lesson. So things going wrong is neither good nor bad. It's only the meaning we ascribe to it. So when you have a question that says, what could I learn if it doesn't work out? It could be to learn that you just don't do business with these people, talk to these kind of people. So really important things you can check. And then a lovely one I like to play with, if my mind's gone off on a fear-based pattern, I'll ask, is this really true? I'll really challenge my mind. Is this really true? And then perhaps if it is, you need to check it, but reality is most of the time, it isn't true. So really nice little set of questions. If you haven't got these, I've got these as slides and little JPEGs and so forth, so you can have these afterwards as a little experiment to bring you out. Okay. Here's a distinction that I think is really important. Shifting the fear of what might happen to trust in your ability that you can deal with them. And I can almost guarantee every single one of us has dealt with something that's been difficult, challenging at some point, and we've overcome it. So let's look at how the next level weaves in about breath work, the body, the nervous system, and why all this stuff matters. So this lovely little illustration here has kind of got the brain firing its neurons. So the brain works in electromagnetics, electric and synaptic signals. So basically a neuron fires, it has a pathway. The brain and the nervous system are all connected. Everything is connected. So when I say nervous system, we talk about brain, the neural tree. If you've ever seen a tree mapped out, the body is quite similar. So the big pit goes over. It's beautiful. It's elegant. And it is an entire ecosystem of information that's traveling body to brain, brain to body. It's a constant system of flow. So our brain doesn't control everything. It's a body and brain conversation. Why it matters is because what happens in some of these key nerves gives us some brain activity, gives us some endocrine stuff, which is the hormones, which changes our state, which changes our type of thinking. So remember, it's all woven together, the brain and the mind, although they're separate, one's physical, one's more conceptual, as best we know, they are woven together. Now, this chap here, you may or may not have heard of it, called the vagus nerve. It's a wonderful nerve. I'm friend with vagus nerve. It literally goes all over the place. So vagus means wandering, which sounds a bit funny, but it wanders. It's well studied in recent times. There's fibers all over the place. It goes through every organ in the body almost. Why it matters is because it talks. So this system talks, this elegant pathway talks from body, so diaphragm, heart, all the way through up. What's interesting is that most of the fibers in this vagus nerve go up. So basically the body is telling brain more information than brain is telling body. So for instance, if I want to lift my arm, my motor cortex in the brain lifts the arm. Very nice. But if I want to downregulate fear and I say, no, I'm fine, no, I'm fine, no, I'm fine, it doesn't really buy it. So we want to go a body up approach when we're mitigating anxiety and high states. This is key. And this is what we now know from sort of neuroscience and how we can use this. Quick bit here, to make it super simple. I've got my little dials. So if you haven't come across this, I can explain more. I'm going to try and keep it simple. We have essentially a couple of sides of the nervous system. One is the sympathetic, illustrated here by the kind of purple bit, which is the fight, flight, busy, activity, conscious, awake. And then the other side is the parasympathetic. It's the kind of chill, rest, digest, healing, sleeping. Perhaps on the far end, it's like complete shutdown, freeze state, trauma state. What we want is a balance between the two, and we do. So when we breathe in, we have a sympathetic response. When we breathe out, it's more parasympathetic, if the breath is working correctly. And this is what we're going to touch on. If we're kind of breathing like that, we're a fully sympathetic response. It's a bit like hitting the throttle in the car and not backing off, which could be a bit crazy around the streets. You want to apply the brake and the throttle in equal measure as required. You don't want to get to the point where your nervous system pulls up the handbrake and says, emergency, stop, we've got to stop. So this is kind of the most important nervous system stuff. It's affected by the breath. So let's get into this. I'm going to tell you a couple of things about breath. I could talk to you all day. I've just done a whole lot of training in this field to a more advanced level, but I'm going to invite you to nose breathe when we do our practice. And the reason being because not only does it, well, there's lots and lots of reasons. I'm going to touch on two. There's about 25, but these two. There's a little gas that's released in the sinus area called the nitric oxide or nitric oxide. This helps facilitate a whole bunch of stuff. So those of you with hay fever at the moment, doing a hold of the nose, so it pulls, the nitric oxide pulls will help open the nose. But this helps open all the bronchioles, so it helps airflow and oxygen absorption. It also, when the nose breath is happening, it facilitates the diaphragmatic movement. Why this matters is because the upper chest is where we have the sympathetic, active, lower belly is parasympathetic. So this is really the key thing about how the system works. So check your diaphragm. I'm going to stand up for this one. I've got an illustration, but I'm going to stand up and do it. So I would invite you to take your hands, get your lowest rib here and hold it. I've been coaching a lot of people through this recently, and a lot of people kind of belly breathe, and that's fairly accurate, but think rather than forward breath, think sideways breath. So you might see my hands as I breathe in. So you can see it's quite wide. That diaphragm is going up and down, as in this little illustration here. As it pushes, as I inhale, it pushes outwards. As I exhale, it draws in. You'll notice my upper chest isn't. Okay, so we want to get the breath low first. Now this will move a bit, but if you're predominantly a chest breather, you'll be in the stress response all the time. If you're predominantly a diaphragmatic breather, you'll be able to downregulate your stress. So take a minute now. If you can't do this sitting, stand up for a second. Breathing through your nose. So you got all those benefits of diaphragm connection, nervous system connection, nitric oxide. Good. Now keep that flowing. And I'm going to invite you to breathe for a count. So this is conscious breath. So breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Breathe out from the lower belly, out the nose for a count of 4. Nice, simple, coherence breath, this is often called. As it gets easier, you want to move to 5-5 if you can. A lot of people can't get to 5-5 straight away. So I will start at 4-4. Breathe in for a count of 4. Breathe out for a count of 4. What do you notice? What's happening as you breathe? And this is what I would often call balanced breath. But if you're on a high anxiety spectrum, super self-conscious, if everything's ramped up, we need to down-regulate. This breath work is the remote control for your nervous system. So I invite you to try this one. So it's a count of 4 in and a count of 6 out. Count of 4 in and a count of 6 out. Let's take a couple more. And you might notice that perhaps your heart rate's changing. So here's a nice little experiment you can do. Keep the breath pattern as you are. Either hold your wrist here, wherever you can find a pulse. Mine's really noticeable here. You might find it here. Take a moment, find your pulse. Okay, I've got mine. So find your pulse. And notice as you breathe in, the pulse rate. Slow that out breath. Notice the pulse rate. Pay close attention to the pulse. Breathe in for 4. Breathe out for 6. Hopefully you can feel the change in pulse. This is heart rate variability. As you into sports science, you'll love this. We don't have time to go into it, but this is a really big understanding. And it's this balance between the two sides of the nervous system. So notice that. I'm just going to move something over here. So that breath pattern is getting you in control. It's connecting your conscious mind, so your thinking mind, which is present, to your body, which is often working automatically or autonomically, it's called. And the breath is directly affecting what I said was the vagus nerve, which is telling the brain what to do. So we've got this whole ecosystem feedback. One of the big issues with feeling self-conscious or getting worried about what people think of us is we go into a threat state. Sympathetic nervous system goes up, we breathe faster, shallower, and then it becomes a downward spiral of anxiety or worry. If we control the breath, we're controlling the physiological components first. That allows us to change how the brain and the mind interrelate, and we can think and behave differently. So all psychology is wonderful. If it is not grounded in the body, it doesn't work effectively. So thinking alone doesn't work because we are wired to an ecosystem which is hardwired to noticing our surroundings. So it's absolutely fundamental. Nice, huh? Ah, okay. And our third piece, so I was talking about this thing about, okay, let's think about, well, how can we shift? How can we utilize having a high sensitivity? How can we actually shift that? And I use the word if you can shift it, it becomes actually something wonderful. So firstly, perspective is ours. We own it. It's made up of all the years of experiences, everything that's happened to us, the good stuff, the negative stuff. It creates like a filter. I often imagine it's a bit like grabbing some eyewear, you know, maybe got red eyewear or yellow, and on it goes, and that's how you see the world. I'm not sure about that person over there. I don't like them. You know, we've seen it with the pandemic, people walking down the street, doing some bizarre things. I mean, I've had people literally jump out of the way when I'm walking. I'm like, okay, a little bit overreactive, but, and you know, you can see it. And that's how we're hardwired. We're hardwired for safety. So our perspective is based on a worldview, and this is something we own. Now, awareness for self-conscious people, we have got loads of it. I have a highly aware nervous system. I have an autoimmune condition, which I have to be super sensitive to. So I can pick up and feel lots of stuff. So on a negative side, that can make me super affected by things, by people's energies and traumas and so forth. But it also makes me highly proficient in the work that I do. So I need to be mindful of how to use him. So what we want to do is conscious regulation. Breath work is the entry point for conscious regulation, combined with mindset, which some of the questions we start at the beginning and the process we're going to go through shortly. Regulation is often what is missing in highly sensitive people. If we can regulate, the sensitivity comes down, and then that sensitivity can be taken up as needed. You can think of it a bit like tuning into radio stations. Yeah, so say you like your favorite radio station, but it's like your tuner can pick up 5 stations at once. And those of you who are super sensitive, you'll know what I mean. You just pick up on everything. And what we want to do is say, that's not necessary right now. I need to pull back my range. I need to pull back my sensitivity. I need to down regulate and take off the sensitivity. Those of you familiar with Dr. Stephen Porges and polyvagal theory, if you are, great, you'll know this. If you don't, simple, effective concept of neuroception. It's pretty much in every cell of the body, from the skin through to the organs, the brain, everything. We are always assessing the environment. You know, if you walk down the road, you might have had this. We walk down the road and you think, I don't feel safe. I feel like, not sure it feels like it's, and you look around, there's like a bunch of scary people nearby and think, oh, I'll cross the road. Good idea, by the way. So our awareness is really attuned for some of us, and this is called neuroception. Again, what we want to do is to have enough awareness of our body. So it's telling us we might need to do something, need to breathe differently, might to physically move. But this neuroception, if you have a heightened neuroception, then down regulating that is going to be really helpful. Just to remind you, this is like the brake system. You can think of it like in your car, like, are you ramped up? Do we need to slow it down? If you're too slow, maybe you need to lift it up. So noticing that conscious control can change the nervous system. Alchemy. I love that word. It's really nice. And I think that we can turn our sensitivity into a superpower. So as with all things, nothing is neither good nor bad. It's the meaning we imbue and how we apply it. So I'm going to invite you to think for a second about how you can use that awareness. You know, some people are numb. Okay. Some people just don't feel. Some people don't, they don't get stuff. So if you're sensitive and you're thinking, oh, I wish I wasn't this sensitive. Well, actually, it can be a superpower, but you need to control it and you need to manage it. So this alchemizing is very much a conscious state, I would say. And I love superpower. Okay. So when we know our body's getting organized, when we know we're sort of checking in with the nervous system and how those triggers and information feedback systems are, then we can get into the smart human bit of what I call self-story. Now, self-story is the story we're going to tell ourselves. You know, what do you tell yourself when you're feeling self-conscious? What do you tell yourself when you meet people digitally or in real life? What do you tell yourself when you put out a piece of work or do something and you're worried what people think? What is your narrative? Now, us wonderful humans live by story. You know, it's been look far back as you want, story's been everywhere. And story is how we define our lives. So if I met you and you met me, we'd say, oh, hey, I'm Sal, I do this, and this is what I do, and I grew up here. It's a story. Everything, it has a story. The thing around story is that sometimes the script got written for us by the past, caregivers, trauma, problems, what have you. But it doesn't mean it cannot be changed. And I think that's the distinction in which we can miss when we start thinking about our clever, wonderful mind. We can actually start changing the story. We can choose what we're actually saying to ourselves. Now, I'm not talking about self-help bumper stickers. Doesn't cut it. You need deep understanding. But deep understanding comes from authenticity. It feels right. Yeah. So getting that language and that story about yourself feeling right. As a longer task, what I would do with this kind of work is to take you through a design, write your own story. And I've done it myself. It's really powerful. You could write a story about your self-consciousness or a story about your business and then rewrite it in another identity form. And it is just wonderful because you'll see how many stories you can create. Presence. How many people are present, right? Presence and life go hand in hand. And in our current world of digital comms, social media, and so forth, we're just half present, which also means we're half living. So being present is utterly powerful right now. But being present means you know what your body's doing. You can feel it. You know what your breathing is doing. You can watch your mind rather than being in the middle of the muddle. So becoming really present, which is what we're going to get into in our exercise. A thought. Okay, let's get into having a look at how we can harness this sensitivity. So first thing I notice for a lot of us is we don't like discomfort. No, do you? I don't. It's like, oh no, it's horrible. I don't want to do it. But relaxing into discomfort is key, because what it means is I don't resist it. The body starts to change. A lot of discomfort is shoulders, it's flexion, look down. Okay. I went in the sea a few times this week. That's interesting. It's chilly. Now, you got choices when you walk in there. You can either experience that cold water, or you can resist it. And you see the people going in like this, is great fun. Or you can just walk in and feel it. And in many ways, our life, we want to walk in and feel it without resistance. Okay. So to give you a little bit of an equation, if you like equations. So here's what I find. When you add trust and action and take away meaning that isn't helpful, massive things change. It's a really simple thing to remember. Develop trust in yourself, take action, remove the negative meaning or change the meaning, massive change. So it's a lovely kind of little thought model that you can hold in your mind. Now I'm going to invite you to try our final piece, which hopefully will pull this all together. And you've got to direct in the body, in the nervous system, in the mind experience. So I'm going to invite you to play along. Here's what we're going to do. I'd like you to think of something that makes you self-conscious. If it's too triggering, you don't have to do this. So don't pick anything too heavyweight, but something, it could be, I don't know, speaking in front of a group or giving a Zoom presentation or whatever. Let that come up so you feel a little bit like, yeah, it's not so good. And then we'll use it as like a thought experiment. So here's what we're going to do. I'll do it with you. Let's start noticing what emotions are coming up. Yeah, you might label them. You might feel them. Sometimes they're not very nice. Sometimes they're a bit, what are they? Notice your emotions that are coming up. It's the first level, and often a really clear level that they're just there. Like, I'm anxious, I'm worried, I'm nervous. Okay. Now start to notice what thoughts you are having. What's the narrative, the story? Yeah, I'm no good. They don't like me. I'm rubbish at this. What are the thoughts that's coming up? Remember, this is simply a thought experiment. You can stop at any time if it's too triggering. And start to check in with your body. What do you feel in your body? What do you notice and where? What do you notice and where? Yeah, what's happening? Jaw muscles, so on and so forth. We have 30 to 50 trillion cells. They all have intelligence and activity and information. The whole system works. Tap into it. Know what I call the map of this stuff is. And then ask the final question, how are you breathing? Is it mouth? Is it upper chest? Is it light? Is it erratic? What are you doing in this self-conscious state? Again, no judgment required. This is pure unraveling and learning what you do. Okay, so what we're going to do now is alchemize this. So bringing awareness and trust. So first of all, you've already got the skill. Start breathing through your nose. Breathe into the lower belly and side ribs. In calmly. Out slowly. Breathing in. Breathing out. Feel the air flowing through your nose, down in the body. Feel the body's shape change. As you breathe out, it's a nice, easy release. Take a couple more breaths. Now, sometimes this needs more. So if you're in a self-conscious state, this might need a little longer. I would recommend a minimum of 90 seconds. The data says our nervous system starts to change in 90 seconds. So as a slow breath, that's around 10 slow breaths, something like that. There's a nice simple number, 10 slow breaths, 4 seconds in, 6 out. And then you can start to notice what's happening in your body. So if you hold in your shoulders, if you tighten your face, furrow your brow, whatever it is you do in that subconscious state, start to let that go. Start to change the physiology of this experience. Remember, mind and body mirror each other. So if you need to soften your shoulders, maybe you need to lift your spine. Perhaps you're in a flex position, and perhaps that's a fear-based state, by the way. All flex positions are fear-based. Start to have an open position, just a sense of lightness and lift. And when that's got organized, remind yourself that you've overcome challenges, because you have. You would not be here today if you have not overcome things. And you can pick one. It could be something similar to this experiment that you're doing. It could be something else. Yeah, God, I gave a presentation, or, you know, I spoke to a group of people I didn't know, or, you know, I put my new website up and it went okay. Notice if your emotions start to change. So I'm smiling right now. It's implicit. I'm like, I'm going to a different state as I'm modeling this with you. I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling like, yeah, I'm kind of more fluid now. I feel stronger, I feel lighter. I feel kind of a little, yeah, it's a vibe going on. So this is a very, it's called neuromapping or neurocognitive mapping. It's called techie stuff. What we want to understand is how the whole thing comes together. So change is always possible. It always is possible. We perhaps just need the right tools and the right map.